Our whole Western civilization is based on an assumption. The assumption is that there is a split within reality between what we call the external reality, matter, and the internal reality, mind. The philosopher René Descartes formulated in his philosophy as the split between the res cogitans, the observing, perceiving inner subject, and the res extensa, the external material object which is existing within time and space. So this split, this duality, is the very basis of our whole Western civilization, which has the assumption that the mind is not only perceiving reality, but by acting in this world can control, can even manipulate the external reality. So Time-Waver is also aware about this general basis of our human experience, but behind the philosophy of Time-Waver we understand that on the level of ultimate reality this split is not there. I personally believe that matter and mind ultimately are one, or to express this in other words, have the same source. So if one goes extremely to the outside, like modern science has gone this way in the beginning of the 20th century by first discovering the theory of relativity, 1905 by Albert Einstein, and then simultaneously discovering quantum physics. They went extremely to the outside by going into matter. And this going into matter has two paths. One path is going into the microcosm, looking at the smallest particles of physical reality, and the other direction is going to the cosmological scale of the galaxies and the universe. So one way resulted in the development of quantum physics, and the other way developed into the development of general relativity, theory of gravitation, and modern cosmology. But the interesting thing is that the more the human mind tried to enter into the objective nature of matter, looking at the atoms, looking at the elementary particles, looking even if there is something more basic than the, or more fundamental than the elementary particles, trying to discover the ultimate object, what matter really is. The more the human mind tried it in the beginning of the last century, the more it discovered that the ultimate object isn't really an object. The ultimate object, the physical reality on the quantum level, is not an object anymore, but it again develops subjective features. It cannot be described anymore independently from the observer which does the experiment or which observes physical reality. So, as the German scientist and philosopher Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker stated, the more the human being tried to look into the objective nature of the external material reality, the more he discovered that ultimately this matter turns out to be a mirror in which he discovers himself. So that's a funny thing. We try to make matter an object, try to separate it as far as possible from our own subjective conscious nature, and the more we do it, the more we suddenly rediscover that the object we are looking at it is not separated from the observing subject, which is our conscious self. So this is something amazing. It was an amazing discovery at the beginning of the last century, which shocked the physicists. Therefore Niels Bohr said, if you're not shocked by quantum physics, you didn't understand it. And simultaneously, in the same time, starting with 1896, it was the discovery of radioactivity. Simultaneously, Sigmund Freud was the first to publish scientific papers on the exploration of the subconscious by psychoanalysis. So I consider therefore 1896 to be a very important event for science. On the one hand, a great revolution was caused leading through to quantum physics to discover the subjective nature of the so-called objective matter. On the other hand, by exploring scientifically the innermost psychic reality, the innermost subjective reality of the subconscious, by the research of Sigmund Freud and later Viktor Frankl and Alfred Adler and Carl Gustav Jung, something like the objective nature of the human psyche was discovered, simultaneously to the great genius discoveries of quantum physics. What do I mean by the objective nature of the human psyche? This is even as amazing, or for me even more amazing discovery than the revolutionary insights of quantum physics. What Carl Gustav Jung discovered, that if we go very deep into the essence, into the nature of this human psyche, into our own subjectivity, we at one point enter into an inner space which is not just a subjective space anymore, but a space, a mind, which all of us belonging to the human species share with each other, so that this inner space, which Jung called the collective subconscious, is not subjective anymore in the sense of it just belongs to me, it is just depends on my own inner perception, but it's something which we all share as human beings. Inner space which is objective in the sense of that others look at it also if they look at the inside. So if you go very deep into your own psyche, you cannot call it my own psyche anymore, but it's a space which we share. Jung discovered this empirically by looking at the dreams and the experiences of 10,000s of patients within his own practice of psychology and psychoanalysis, but also with many others dealing with the subjects. It wasn't a religious or spiritual assumption, but an empirical observation. There is something within ourselves which is collective, which is objective, which is an heritage of the human being, and which has on a very deep level something like an objective absolute knowledge, something which transcends the subjectivity of our individual consciousness. So if we look very deeply within, we find something like an objective psyche, and if we look very far to the outside reality which we observe, we come to something like a subjective matter. So the outer space becomes subjective and the inner space becomes objective. Therefore, I'm very strongly convinced that if we go very far outside, and if we go simultaneously very deep inside, we meet at the same point. That the subjective matter and the objective psyche turn out to be the same one reality, which in ancient cultures like the ancient Buddhist culture or the ancient Vedic culture or the ancient Chinese culture call the one mind. In the Tibetan Buddhism it's called Dharmakaya. In the Sanskrit terminology it's called Brahman. In the Chinese terminology there is different expressions for it. So all of the ancient cultures who were much more concerned with the subconscious, whereas our culture is mainly concerned with the conscious reality, the external reality, what we can live outside of ourselves. This internalized cultures, which were more in connection with the subconscious, they had this this realization. So I believe this time in which we are living now is very, very amazing, and it's very important in the history of humanity, because we made an extremely sophisticated progress in the development of consciousness. And development of consciousness means differentiation in our perception of reality. The differentiation is amazing. Just look at what modern medicine discovered about all the different aspects and parts of the human body. Just look at a cell, how many components it has, how many hundreds of thousands of biochemical processes, different biochemical processes, taking place in our cells every second, any millisecond. The differentiation of elementary particle physics, of cosmology, and at the same time the differentiation in the complexity of our life, our just daily life. We are dealing with smartphones and with all the information of the internet, with the complexity in our job, in our work, in business. It's just amazing, it's overwhelming and mind-blowing, and therefore the most common problems and diseases which we nowadays have is called burnout. Burnout many times is just due to being overwhelmed by the complexity of one's life. And it just means you see the differentiation, you see the complexity, you see how so many different aspects simultaneously are there, but you cannot perceive what it all means. And what it all means you cannot perceive the unity. Because the unity is not available through the differentiation of consciousness. The unity is available by the discovery of the inner world. Because the more you go inside, the more you approach unity. The more you go outside in external consciousness and in matter, the more you approach diversity and differentiation. So the only way how we can handle the complexity and differentiation of consciousness is to simultaneously go deep inside and discover the deep meaning of it, to discover the deep unity within ourselves. So therefore, in this moment where we have the great chance of this highly, extremely differentiated and developed consciousness with all its scientific implications, with all our differentiated perception, is to go deep inside and combine the inner and the outer experience. And this combination takes place on a very deep internal level, which we can call the psychomatter or the metapsyche. We don't have an expression for it. We can call it the one mind, we can call it the one level of existence. I like to call it the information field. Because information is kind of an aspect of matter, but it has a mental or a component of mind. Information is not matter, but it is also not pure mind. It is something in between, but not something like 70% matter and 30% mind, like in fuzzy logics, but it is something which transcends the duality of mind and matter. It combines both, it connects both. It's something new, it's something third. So information is the missing link between matter and mind. Information is a reality which we are discovering in physics and quantum physics, which we are discovering also in modern technical life by the development of cybernetics and the internet. Therefore we call our age the information age. I would call the next age, after this information age, the information field age. The age of the informational field. Because this deep level which we urgently need to approach, where matter and psyche meet, where the original unity of the reality is re-established, to which we have to connect if we want to be able to live within this world of complexity, if we want to be healthy. To be healthy means to be whole, like to be healed. to be holy. All these words like healed, holy, whole are connected to experiencing the unity and the ultimate oneness or the meaning of reality on this deep level. So this deep level within us are within the background of reality. You can call it the quantum zero field. You can call it the fifth field. There are so many different terms which try to describe it. We call it the informational field because it's a little technical term, but it gives us also a clue how to practically approach it and what to practically do with it. TimeWaver is a device which is designed as an interface between the consciousness of the human being and the informational field. And therefore, TimeWaver is a device which is designed to re-establish the communication between our conscious and our subconscious being, between the outer world and the deeper meaning behind, between the outer physical reality in which we're living as a conscious being and the deeper psychological or also spiritual levels of reality. And we are we are convinced, and also by so much experience with 10,000s of clients, we are convinced that the problems which people are facing nowadays, be it health problems, be it problems in business, whatever happens in life, is not just happening by chance, but it has a deep reason. It has a deep connection to underlying courses and relationships on a deeper level. So the definition of information field technology is to analyze the deeper connections of problems on the level of the informational field.